Hello everyone, welcome to A Perfect Game. Technical play is needed for success, and if you're new to the game, looking to get your first invite, or top up in your event, hitting that subscribe button is the first step. With the new Ishizu cards coming out of Magnificent Mavens, I want to give you guys a one-on-one of things to do and things not to do, some theories and technical interactions to help you guys be the most successful that you guys can be at these events. Now, the first concept I want to go over, you have basically 4 Ishizu monsters, 2 that shuffle cards within either player's graveyard, and you have 2 that mill 5. And the key thing to note is blind, you never really want to make your opponent mill 5. You're always taking a risk. Your opponent can be on the mirror match. Your opponent can be teching in Ishizu cards in a specific variant, maybe like Ishizu Tear or something else. And you really don't want to risk your opponent continuing to either play their engine or your opponent to be able to disrupt you with the Ishizu cards. You want to play Tear as Tear is currently and use the Ishizu cards as a last resort or a secondary option when you need it. Obviously, if you know they're not on Ishizu cards, then you can really blow them out the water. Now, given the first example here, my opponent is going to do a standard combo where they're going to go for the mill 8 and they're going to make me mill my deck. And that's one thing that you're not going to do. Your opponent now has full combo in the graveyard without even playing a card from their hand. Using the Ishizu cards can be a bit of overkill. When you already have the mill 8 or you have the mill 6 with Scream and maybe like a Shuren, you kind of already can get to your combo already without having to force your opponent to mill. If you do have to force your opponent to mill to play, what I like to do, if you have Midoriya, then you can let your opponent mill 5. So maybe have Midoriya and then you have a statue, you can let your opponent mill more. You won't do that simultaneously, but that is an option that you can do. It's still a risk because even if your opponent doesn't mill any tier monsters or they mill something else, then you're still allowing your opponent to basically play their whole deck without even using cards in their hand while you're still wasting card advantage yourself to be able to fusion summon. That's the biggest thing. The second thing I wanted to go over is the way Tears played already is a pretty skillful deck. The mirror match does have a few interactions that you need to be careful of, but you really got to think ahead. There's so many interactions where now you have to think further ahead. You could see a very high chain links that you have to manage. Could be a chain link 5, could be a chain link 8. So really think about every activation that you make. How is that going to move for the future interaction? One of the other things that I've considered is turboing Dweller, right? So if you can turbo the Dweller, maybe you think that you can mill safely, and that is sometimes true. I think it's true most of the time. The only thing is, it's not as easy to turbo Dweller in Tearlaments, but the biggest risk for that can be game changing is the Vanguard. If your opponent has Vanguard in their hand and you Dweller early and then you try to combo, your opponent can bounce your Dweller to your hand, and that can be very crucial as you wasted the resources to make that Dweller. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. And then the other thing to keep in mind is the Tearlament field spell. This card's absolutely insane, and I don't think you guys, space-wise, should be cutting terraforming because this card gets so much better with the Ishizu cards. It now becomes a mine out more consistently than not, and is very crucial in the mirror with the tag boost. So say I mill a Tearlament monster, and my opponent goes activate statue to shuffle my cards. Yes, I lose the activation of the tier name, but I'm able to now pop a card on the field, and that before means you really have to think ahead, like I mentioned earlier, and think about how every interaction your opponent could potentially benefit from or what your opponent could potentially have. Also, if your opponent activates a Mystic Mine, you have the field spell, you can easily chain a Midoriya or a statue in your graveyard to shuffle Aqua back, and on resolution trigger your field spell to pop the Mystic Mine. So there's so many insane things that you can do, and this is just a one-on-one. If you guys really thought that some of the insights were helpful, then definitely like and subscribe. I'll come out with some more nitty-gritty technical play, but as you can see from this short clip, my opponent didn't really gain anything as part of their combo by making me mill besides giving me card advantage. If you make your opponent mill, that's really favoring the player that's going second more than the player going first. The Ishizu cards allow you to have an insane resource game, an insane ability to combo consistently, but in the mirror match specifically, you just have to be cautious and really not let your opponent mill if you don't need to. A lot of the boards that you make with tier are already strong. They don't really need Ishizu cards to function. Thanks for listening in, and of course, stand your ground.
Stand your ground.